Just past midnight on April 13th, the skies over Israel bore witness to a fearsome display. Hundreds of military drones launched from Iran and Iraq initiated an assault on Israel.
Breaking news: in a major escalation of the crisis in the Middle East, Iran has started a direct attack on Israel by launching dozens of drones to attack targets there.
This opening salvo was quickly followed by numerous waves of ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and rockets coming from not just Iran and Iraq, but also Yemen and Lebanon. This is not merely a regional skirmish. It echoes the ghosts of past conflicts, such as the US-led invasion of Iraq in 2003. A war with Iran, or even supporting Israel in a conflict against Iran, would be far more complex, costly, and devastating, with potentially disastrous consequences for the entire region and beyond. Despite the fact that most Americans want to end proxy wars and focus on domestic issues like improving lives at home, the arms industry and some politicians in Washington seem determined to keep funding conflicts abroad. American support for active engagement in world affairs has been a long-standing indicator of their stance on U.S. foreign policy. According to the 2023 Chicago Council survey, which has been tracking public opinion on this matter for nearly 5 decades, 53% of Americans believe that taking an active role in global issues is in the best interest of the nation's future. On the other hand, 46% of respondents feel that the United States should avoid involvement in international affairs. However, President Biden has pledged to support Israel for, quotes, as long as it takes, a stance that could drag the United States into a protracted and expensive war. The reality is that Iran is a formidable adversary, far more capable than Iraq was in 2003. With a population of over 82 million and a landmass nearly 4 times the size of Iraq, Iran has significant human and geographic advantages. Its military is also more advanced, with an estimated 523,000 active personnel and 250,000 reserve personnel, compared to Iraq's 450,000 troops at the start of the U.S. invasion. Furthermore, Iran has invested heavily in asymmetric capabilities such as ballistic missiles and proxy forces, which could inflict significant damage on U.S. interests and allies in the region. Moreover, Iran's strategic location makes it a critical player in the global energy market. Bordered by the Caspian Sea, the Persian Gulf, and the Gulf of Oman, Iran has the ability to disrupt oil shipments through the vital Strait of Hormuz, through which a third of the world's seaborne oil passes. In a conflict scenario, Iran might attempt to close the strait, causing global oil prices to skyrocket. A 2018 study by the CNA Corporation estimated that a closure of the Strait of Hormuz for just 1 month could lead to a 30% increase in global oil prices. The cost of a war with Iran would be astronomical, likely far exceeding the already staggering costs of America's military engagements since 9/11. According to a report by the Stimson Center, between 2001 and 2010, the U.S. spent a mind-boggling $1 trillion on military equipment alone. Shockingly, during this period, the Air Force procured only 220 fighter jets, while spending 55% as much money as it did between 1981 and 1990, when it bought 2,063 fighters. This trend of skyrocketing costs for fewer assets is unsustainable and diverts resources from pressing domestic needs. The Pentagon's budget is already bloated with waste and inefficiencies. In September 2014, a report revealed that the Department of Defense had $857 million in excess parts and supplies. Even more alarming examples of waste include the expenditure of $150 million on private villas for a handful of Pentagon employees in Afghanistan and the procurement of the J-Lens air defense balloon, which cost $2.7 billion over 2 decades of development. A 2015 internal study found that the Department of Defense could save $125 billion over 5 years by streamlining bureaucracy, renegotiating contracts, and offering early retirements. In 2018, the Pentagon failed its first ever comprehensive audit, highlighting the need for greater fiscal accountability. Despite this, the U.S. military budget has continued to grow, reaching a staggering $777.1 billion in fiscal year 2022 budget. This level of spending is increasingly difficult to justify, especially when considering that the U.S. spends more on defense than the next 10 countries combined, according to the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute. The human cost of a war with Iran would be immeasurable. The Iraq War, based on false pretenses and faulty intelligence, claimed the lives of over 4,400 U.S. service members and hundreds of thousands of Iraqi civilians. It also left a legacy of trauma, displacement, and instability that persists to this day. A war with Iran, a country with a population more than 3 times that of Iraq, would likely result in even greater casualties and suffering on all sides. Furthermore, a war with Iran would likely lead to a surge in terrorist activity and anti-American sentiment across the Middle East, making the region even more unstable and hostile to U.S. interests. The Iraq War, for example, led to the rise of ISIS and other extremist groups that continue to threaten regional stability and American security. A war with Iran could similarly spark a new wave of terrorism and instability, undermining U.S. objectives in the region for decades to come. For Israel, launching a preemptive strike against Iran would be a grave miscalculation that would almost certainly backfire. As the recent Iranian attack on Israel demonstrated, Iran has the capability to retaliate with significant force even if its initial assault was largely thwarted by Israel's defense systems. An Israeli strike would likely trigger a regional war, with Iran's proxies in Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Yemen targeting Israel and other U.S. allies. The resulting conflict could quickly spiral out of control, potentially drawing in other regional powers like Russia and Turkey. The United States and Israel must work together to address the complex challenges posed by Iran, prioritizing diplomacy and multilateral engagement over military action. The U.S. should be wary of being dragged into another costly and open-ended conflict in the Middle East, as its military is already stretched thin by commitments in Ukraine, Iraq, and elsewhere. Embarking on a war with Iran could easily spiral out of control, with devastating consequences for the region and the world. Instead of rushing into another disastrous conflict, the United States should focus on diplomatic solutions. This could include reviving the nuclear deal with Iran, using a combination of incentives and pressure to bring the country back into compliance with its obligations. The U.S. should also strengthen its partnerships with regional allies like Israel, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE while engaging in dialogue with Iran to address broader issues of regional security and stability. For Israel, launching a preemptive strike against Iran would be a grave miscalculation that would almost certainly backfire. As the recent Iranian attack on Israel demonstrated, Iran has the capability to retaliate with significant force, even if its initial assault was largely thwarted by Israel's defense systems. An Israeli strike would likely trigger a regional war, with Iran's proxies in Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Yemen targeting Israel and other U.S. allies. The resulting conflict could quickly spiral out of control, with devastating consequences for all involved. The United States and Israel must learn from the painful lessons of the Iraq War and resist the temptation to resort to force. Instead, they should pursue a comprehensive, long-term strategy that prioritizes diplomacy, economic pressure, and regional engagement. This could include rejoining the Iran nuclear deal, working with allies to impose targeted sanctions, and pursuing confidence-building measures to reduce tensions. Ultimately, the American people want their leaders to focus on improving their lives at home, not wasting trillions of dollars and countless lives on another unwinnable war in the Middle East. As the famous saying goes, those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. Let us hope that the United States and Israel have learned from the past and will approach the challenges posed by Iran with wisdom, restraint, and a commitment to diplomacy and peace.